Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mama Jack podcast. Today we have empath coach Jessica. She helps traumatized empaths become empowered by teaching them how to release and process their emotions so they can feel safe and create the life they desire. This is a lot about her personal journey and what led her to want to become an empath coach. Her story is very inspirational, and I will just get to it. I hope you like it. Without further delay, here is the interview with Jessica and I.
Hi, Jessica. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. So, you are here to speak on what happened in your life to get you to where you are today. How would you like to start that out?
Yeah, so I wanted to share a little on my journey of being a mother and parenting through grief and trauma as a highly sensitive empath.
And I feel you on the empath because, girl, same.
Yeah, there's a lot of us out there, and a lot of us don't even realize it.
Yep, that's the truth. So, how did you realize that you were an empath, and what steps do you take that help you day to day?
So I didn't know I was an empath until someone told me that I was. My spiritual coach that I went to after my sister passed, she gave me a reading and she's like, "Did you know that, you're an empath and that you have psychic abilities?" And I was like, "What?" Like, she just blew my mind. So I was like, "No." She's like, "Well, do you feel overwhelmed in crowds and just have a hard time expressing emotions? And do you have constant anxiety and all this stuff?" And I looked at her like, "How does she know this?"
You're reading from my biography right now as well. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's get into your history. So what kind of happened to bring you to this realization that empaths need help?
Well, that just came from my own journey of me realizing that knowing who I am, what I am, and how trauma has impacted my life and understanding it helped me to realize that it's something I can separate from myself and learn how to heal, and that I don't have to feel everything at once, that I can shield and protect myself. So when I learned that, I wanted to share it with everybody else that's an empath so they didn't have to suffer.
That's beautiful because that is truly a hard thing to do. I'm going through it myself. Did you want to go into the traumas a little bit, or did you want to steer clear of that?
Oh no, I love talking about my traumas and being vulnerable so people could really understand what it's like.
Okay, well, the floor is yours, Mama.
So everyone asks you what do you want to be when you grow up? And I knew more than anything that I wanted to be a mother. But in reality, being a parent is nothing like I had imagined. Sure, there's moments of like pure joy and happiness and the feeling of love that's so consuming that you can feel the warmth in your entire body. But there's also moments that no one talks about, like loneliness, guilt, fear, anger, helplessness, worry, anxiety, overwhelm, burnout, exhaustion, resentment, regret. The list goes on and on. Like, most mothers are ecstatic when they find out that they're pregnant, but at 17, I was terrified and mortified.
Of course.
And sure, I always dreamed of being a mother, but not yet. So my whole life that I had set up my senior year basically to become a nurse had just completely stopped. I was like, what am I supposed to do now? When I got pregnant was, to me, the worst timing ever. I had just lost my grandma 2 months prior to finding out. And by the way, I was with this guy for only 2 months as well. So we didn't even know each other and we were having a baby. And before my grandma died, the year prior to that, I watched my aunt die of cancer. So I also had childhood trauma and all this stuff that I had suppressed. And then I became pregnant and I just felt so overwhelmed with fear and anxiety. But there was also there was like deep down, there was a little bit of excitement because I always wanted to be a mother.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just overpowered by fear that I had a really hard time connecting to the baby while I was pregnant. And my pregnancy was very difficult because I was just so anxious. And, part of being an empath is you feel so much more than others do. It's more powerful. And I also feel the energy of everybody around me. So I just kind of felt ashamed because other people felt that and I could feel that because you're too young to be a mom. Your whole future is ahead of you. Don't you know how babies are made? Can't you use protection? So all the things people were saying and thinking really got to me. And I lost a lot of friends because of it. And they all were partying and I had to not because I was pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got pregnant, my boyfriend and now husband at the time, we decided to move into an apartment. And I went from living in a house with 7 people because we had to take in my cousins after they lost their mother. So we had a really full house. And I went into an apartment and ended up being just me and my then boyfriend. But I was completely alone a lot of the time. And it was the darkest place I'd found myself being pregnant. I was having suicidal thoughts, but I couldn't act on them because I would never hurt my child. I had a hard time like envisioning like a purpose of being here with having all of this pain this grief that is holding me down. I couldn't think positively at all. So I remember sitting, I don't even know if it was on the floor and just disassociating and like trying to grasp onto anything that was positive. So I remembered Halloween was coming up and Halloween's my favorite holiday. So I was just like, Halloween's coming. Let's just keep going until then. And then I knew I was having a baby and I would fake trying to connect. Like I wanted to, but I couldn't. So I'd hold on to my stomach and be like, it's okay, baby. We're going to be okay, even though I didn't know if we would be.
Mm-hmm.
I just kept kind of faking it until I made it, put a mask on and I was going to college. I was trying to do it all, but inside I was just dying and I just thought it would be easier if I wasn't even here anymore because I couldn't take the pain. It was so crippling.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the pregnancy, knowing I'm becoming a mom, there's just so many mixed feelings with that. And, the fear of is my boyfriend going to be with me? Is he just with me because we're having a baby? Like, what if, all the what ifs.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up, I don't know how far I was in my pregnancy. I think I was around like 30 weeks or something. I was like, I have to move back in with my parents. I can't do this. I had to let my boyfriend know, I'm like, I'm not breaking up with you. I just can't live with you right now. Like, I'm going nuts. And he was like, okay. 3 weeks after that, at 33 weeks pregnant, my son was born. And to this day, they say they don't know why, but I know it's because my body was rejecting him because
Mm-hmm.
I had so much fear and anxiety that my body was trying to like release it. Or my other theory is just that my son was so stubborn, he didn't want to be in there anymore.
Probably a little of both.
The beautiful thing is that in that moment that I was having him, although I was terrified and of everything, of the pain, or, I was 18, I didn't know what to expect. The moment I heard him cry, just the world stopped and I was so happy. And it's like I almost, I don't know, like there was just something hit me and I was just like happy. And I'm like, oh, what's this feeling? And then the next moment, fear and anxiety sets in as the nurses rush him to the NICU. I didn't even get to see him or hold him. So that was really hard. He was 7 weeks premature. He had apnea, so he would stop breathing, and they constantly had to like rub his foot or stimulate him to wake up. He was hooked up to tubes, oxygen. He was in an incubator, so it was like a box for babies. Like
Mhm.
there was little holes where you could put your hands through to touch him, and it felt like it was like looking at a doll. Just
Yeah.
it was just so bizarre. Like, how can something this little still survive? He was almost 4 pounds, not quite. So he was actually kind of big considering being born early, but he did have issues where he was losing weight because he didn't know how to eat. He couldn't suck yet.
Mhm.
So there was a lot of fear coming in right away to being a mother. Like, here you are, 18, you have a baby, but you also can't take him home. It's not like the movies. Like,
Yeah.
he's spent a month in the NICU.
Dang, girl.
And it was just so weird because part of me was like thankful because then I could sleep at night. Like looking back now, it's like I needed that rest so that I could be there for him during the day.
Mhm.
And I was there every day. I pumped for him. I pumped breast milk for him. I remember sitting on the end of my bed. Somehow hours had passed and I didn't even realize it. And I was like, oh, I need to go. I need to go see my son. I didn't know, but I had like undiagnosed postpartum depression.
Mhm.
Now I know that just the amount of fear and anxiety and excitement, it was crazy. So when we brought him home a month later, I had to feed him every hour, every 2 hours. I constantly put my finger under his nose to check if he was still breathing.
Yeah.
So it was just so, so scary. And so going into motherhood was just nothing like I had imagined. But after we got through the part where you're like, oh, I can walk away from my baby, he's not going to die, you know. And he started, going to the doctors and they're like, he's meeting all his milestones and he's healthy. So then you start to feel like, okay, I can breathe a little bit. And then once that point passed, it got a little easier. I was starting to feel, I felt so much love for this little boy. The first time I held him, it was just like this love that I never felt that consumed every cell of my body. The thing with me as an empath is like there's two sides. There's like a dark side and a light side. It's like I know that everything will be okay. I'm so happy in this moment, but then there's the other side that's like, no, like the ego. It's like, no, we're scared. We're supposed to be scared right now. So I constantly felt like I was fighting two sides, kind of like a Jekyll and Hyde. There was no like in between. So I would kind of go in and out and of the dark out of the darkness and into the light. And so there was just a constant pulling of like, how am I supposed to be feeling right now?
I
And
understand that.
yeah, it's really hard. My son, he's always been more difficult. When he experienced any emotion, it was heightened to the highest possible level. Like if he was excited, he would jump up and down, moving his hands around like he just couldn't contain it. And it was just I loved it. It was just so cute. But then when he had his tantrums, they were so intense. I could not control him.
Mhm.
And he, as a baby, would headbutt me on accident because he'd just fling his head back. And I'd try to catch him, and he would just throw these tantrums, and they were triggering for me. I had a hard time consoling him because he wasn't consolable until he calmed down. And I had to, over time, learn like he just needed some space to himself. And it was good because then I learned that I needed some space. So I would just set him down in his crib and just let him just go through, because it seemed like me being there with my, like, he could feel my energy. Like I was anxious because he was crying and I couldn't help him.
Yeah.
And separating and just kind of getting my energy away from him and coming back with a calm energy was very helpful. And then we both kind of almost soothed one another, like, it's okay, you know. It's just crazy, kind of like there's a lot of like guilt. And I even kind of feel like later some people would be like, well, he must get that from you, because I don't know where that comes from. Like his tantrums and, you know, these things. And I'm just like, what? Like, okay.
All kids throw tantrums. My son, oh my God. Like he's starting to grow out of them because he's like leaning towards 4. But holy crap, when it's happening, it's like you can't do anything. Like you
Mm-mm.
literally can't do anything. You have to just let him go through it. We try not to let him like destroy the house or hit anybody, but it's literally the worst. I feel you, girl.
Yeah, it is. So to this day, he's 14 now. He's still my most difficult. But he's, also stubborn, and I know that as he grows, he's going to be like, I don't know, a CEO or something. They're all gifts, but it's like we have to learn how to react to them. And, I was a teenage mom trying to learn how to help my child, but I didn't even know what to do because I wasn't modeled what should be done. I was modeled, spanking and all those things, but
Yeah.
I didn't like that. I didn't want to do that. And so I did, when things got really bad, I didn't know what else to do. I have I have in the past spanked him a few times, and when I did, I felt so much guilt that and I wouldn't hit him hard and like it wouldn't do anything, but it just tore me up.
And it makes
And
it worse. Like
it
I
does.
think I've done that 2 times in the whole history of my son. It makes it worse, and then they feel bad and they don't know
Mhm.
what they're doing. So then it
Right.
makes you feel guilty and it's
Mhm.
just not worth it. Yeah. But I know the feeling of getting so overwhelmed that you feel like there's no other choice. Like
Mhm.
literally you've drained all of your choices. And then over time you learn to just walk away and ignore it. Like, and my
Yes.
when I tell you, like, quick story, sorry to interrupt, she had the worst time understanding that when I was living with her.
Mhm.
And she would be like, you need to control your child. And I'm like, he needs to learn how to regulate on his own. And I
Mhm.
tell him, like, honey, I'm here when you need me for a hug. Like, I'd make sure he was okay. He'd throw his tantrums, he'd get over them. And they say that that builds a healthier coping mechanism as you get older. So we'll see.
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's what I started to do with him. As he got older, the tantrums got less intense, but I knew he just needed time to himself because that's what I had to do. I had to, if anything happened, good or bad, and I was sad or I needed somebody, or if I did something wrong, I was sent to my room because they didn't want to hear me cry.
Hmm.
And so I spent time alone trying to figure out how to regulate my own emotions. So as an adult, trying to parent my child, I didn't have any model on how to do it the right way. So we kind of had to learn as we go, and that's parenting. It's funny because a lot of friends or people, they're like, of the age where you normally have children, they're like, I'm so nervous. I don't know if I can do it. And I'm just like, I was 17. I think you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't think it matters what age you're at, like, unless you have a ton of money to have a full staff with your kid, it's still so nerve-wracking. But
oh,
at
absolutely.
17, excuse me, hold on. At 17, you just, you really pick it up. I
Yeah.
think you were super mature. I think a lot of 17-year-olds that end up having kids and teens that have kids actually shock themselves. And then
Hmm.
from my understanding, and I don't know, I'll let you continue your story, it kind of comes back somewhere in another part of your life. But like all
Yeah.
the craziness and stuff. But yeah, I mean, good for you, girl. It was hard for me in my 30s.
Oh,
So,
it
you
is.
know,
It is. And the thing is, when you have children and you have trauma, like everything comes back. Like you suppress it,
yep.
but your children trigger you because it's like looking at yourself as a child and trying to parent yourself. And you're like, what do I do? And you usually resort to what you were modeled or you don't. And then you have no idea what to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I mean, there were so many moments where I would cry myself to sleep almost nightly, being like, I should have done this, I should have done that. I want to be better. And I was so hard on myself. It wasn't true. Like looking back and seeing pictures of like how we were together, my kids, just if I look back and kind of look at life through their eyes instead of mine, I was always there for them. We did crafts together. They had everything that they needed, you know. No, I wasn't perfect, but it's just all they really need is you to be there. They don't
Yeah.
need as much from us as we think that they do.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I was, like I said, I was 18 when I had Jackson. And then, I really wanted more children. It's like, okay, now my life is headed in a different direction, so I kind of have to change gears. My boyfriend, fiance, and now husband. So he was my fiance at the time, and he was going to get his engineering degree. And so I put my career on hold. I did end up going back to college. I was going towards my nursing degree, but I was like, I just kind of want to stop for now and I want to be a mom. I want to stay home with my kids and then go back to my career later. And so at my husband's graduation, I found out I was pregnant with my second child. And I was really wanting a girl because I wanted a boy and a girl, but it's just not how it works.
Yeah.
And so, when I found out he was a boy, I was like, just a split second of like, oh no, because my husband didn't want anymore. So I was sad because I'm like, I'll never have a daughter. But then let me tell you, this kid, he was just this little boy, just so much. It was such a different experience. I did almost have him in the car. They did not they did not get my name at the hospital. The nurses are like, "Hold him in," basically, and I was like, no, you guys know what you're doing. Please, like, get him out." And they're like, "Oh." They're like, "Yeah, I went in there and I was 10 centimeters dilated," and I'm like, "He's here, like, he's here." And so my OB didn't even get to see me. I think a resident delivered him. And so he came so suddenly that he dropped so suddenly that he bruised his face.
Oh.
Yeah, and it was a natural delivery, and it was so painful because my body was in shock from him just coming out so quick, and my husband had to hold him because I was shaking. I couldn't hold him, I was too scared I would drop him, so it was, better because he was in the room with me, but it kinda sucked because I couldn't hold him for, like, 5 hours, but then when I finally calmed down, he he put him on my chest, and it's like, "Oh, this is how it's supposed to be." Like, you're supposed to be able to hold your baby after they're born, and the nurses left him in the room with me, and I'm like, "Wait, wait,
Yeah, it's
is he"
scary, right?
Yeah, I'm like, "Is
Yeah.
he okay here?"
Yeah, that's how it was with my first was in the NICU, very short stay, but my second wasn't. And yeah, it's scary whenever they give you the baby and you're like, are you sure they're breathing? Are you sure they're this? Because your first one kind of gets you all shaken up because he had problems with gurgling in his lungs. So it was a breathing issue as well. And I did a lot of the stuff you did by checking for, I still check to see if they're breathing in their monitors.
Mhm.
Like I still do that. And they're 3 and 19 months, but keep going. So you got to hold your second baby for the first time.
Yes, and so I tried breastfeeding. I couldn't do that with my other son. I had to pump, and so I tried that, and it was like, I experienced a lot of pain, but I didn't care. Like, this, was all worth it. Like, here he is, like, I can hold him, I could take him home. So we were already living in our first home, and at this point, it's like I have 2 kids, I was doing pretty well. I wasn't on medication, like, my kids turned into, like, my I don't wanna say they were, like, my prescription, but they were, like, my serotonin, they were, like, my reason for living, and, like, I put everything into my kids, but I wasn't taking care of myself. Like,
Yeah.
on the outside, I looked good, or I tried to keep my house clean, like, I looked like I was doing good, but, like, I was draining my cup.
Mhm.
Yeah, so there were moments where I was feeling completely exhausted, overwhelmed, and burnt out from all the stress of keeping the house clean, keeping everybody fed, getting kids to school, like, as time passed, and, there are also a lot of great moments of, like, kids. One example comes to mind when I think of my 2 boys is a video of my older son. I think he was 6 at the time, and my other one was 1. They were playing lightsabers, and my 6-year-old swung it and hit him right in the face, and I was like, "Jackson," and he ran away because he knew he was gonna get in trouble for, like, face, but my my middle child, you could not baby proof him. He was gonna get through anything and do whatever, so he constantly kept me on my toes, he still does. So he was a handful. They're both handfuls, but it was just beautiful. And for some reason, I just didn't feel complete having children. I still wanted to read books and tuck them in, and I just wasn't ready to be done. And so my husband didn't want any more, and I wanted to respect that. And so I tried my best to be okay with just 2, and I wanted a little girl, yes, but I didn't care if it was a boy or a girl. I knew I wasn't done. And so I had a dream that I had a daughter with brown hair, and my husband held her and he cried. And I woke up and it felt so real. I could not shake it off. I would go to stores and see baby girl clothes, and it would just, like, hurt me so deeply because I'm like, I am meant to have a daughter. I'd see little girls with their moms, and I had that with my mom, and my grandma had a daughter, and so I'm used to that bond, like, my boys aren't gonna want me. They're gonna wanna be with their dad, so I'm gonna be left alone.
Yeah.
And so I kept this from my husband for a year, and it was really starting to eat at me. And so I finally sat him down and I was like, "Babe," I was like, I just want you to know that I've been thinking about having another kid." And he's just like, "What?" And I kind of told him what I told you, and he was like, "No." And I was like, "What? You can't just say no. You got to think about this. Like, I've been thinking about this for a year. Like, at least sit for a day and, like, think about it." And so that was hurtful
Yeah.
for me. But I also wanted to be respectful of him because, like, it's his choice too. It's not just mine.
Yeah.
And so for him, the no is because, money, and as a provider, he's like, well, I want to he's thinking into the future, college and vehicles. And I'm like, babe, I don't care about that stuff. That stuff will work out later. I want to have another child. Like, yes, I want a daughter. I want to have that bond. I want somebody that will, like, always need me and come back. Not that my boys won't, but usually the boys just want you when they're sick or something. And then it just so happened that, I don't know, like that same year or something, his parents were moving. And so their house was available. And so we decided to buy it. And so my husband, one of his concerns was not having enough room in the house and not having enough room in our vehicle. So those things just changed magically. It's because it's something I wanted so badly that I manifested
Mhm.
it to come true. And then I had a daughter, and just like my dream, she had brown hair, and my husband just bald when she was born. And they have the closest relationship ever, and I secretly remind him of what he didn't want.
Of
And
course.
yeah, and they actually just yesterday had their first daddy-daughter dance, and
Oh.
it's just so adorable. And with every child, I love my husband even more. It's just crazy to see a man with a little girl. I don't know. It's just I don't even know how to explain how beautiful it is to witness, because you see the gentle side
Hmm.
of them, like the more feminine, soft energy, and they do definitely become more protective. So when my third was born, I felt so complete. I'm like, I have two boys and a girl, and these boys are going to protect my little girl, and it was just perfect. I honestly, for the first 2 years of her life, was the happiest I've ever been. Financially, we're doing okay. I felt okay. Besides the fact that I had a ton of anxiety going out in public with three children. Like,
Yeah, well, of course. Yeah.
and this was the time where sex trafficking kind of blew up more. And so, like, I really didn't want to leave my house. I was really scared. There was a lot of anxiety with that, just the normal stuff of like my kids trying to climb up a rock wall, and I'm just like, no, like, don't do that, because I don't want you to get hurt, but I want you to experience life, but I don't want like, I
Yeah.
just don't, like, just let me be behind you, and like stuff like that. Like, I don't ever want anything bad to happen to my kids if I can prevent it, like that. But like, I want my kids to grow and learn at the same time. It's a really hard medium
Yeah,
to,
right.
yes. So we were doing really well, and then my sister passed. She passed away, and I don't know, that her death just completely shattered me. Like I said before, I suppressed all of my emotions from my childhood trauma and the loss of my aunt. I watched her die while her two children said goodbye to her at 16. And then my grandma, she was my best friend. She was only 52. She passed. Looking back, I actually did lose an ex-boyfriend of mine. He was my boyfriend in 8th grade, but still,
Yeah.
he passed away when we were in high school, and I never processed that. So just all the things I've been through, sexual trauma and just so many different things. Everything hit me at once when my sister died. And so this pain was just so overwhelming. When my husband told me that she died, I literally dropped to my knees and passed out, because the pain was too overwhelming for me as an empath to even bear. And so the first week following her death was just so hard, because I couldn't tell my kids yet. I could not. I was just trying to survive. I was just trying to hold it together for me to get through to the funeral, because my
Hmm.
brother was out of state and he was in the Air Force, so we had to wait for him to get home. So it kind of dragged it on, and so I tried to be as strong as I possibly could. Like, for my sister's funeral, I dressed well. I did my makeup. When we were at the funeral, I was at the, not the funeral, but the wake, I think you call it, where
Yeah.
everybody is there. I was consoling everybody else, because I had already experienced death before.
Hmm.
So I was like, I'm going to focus on everybody else and ignore myself. And so I was like, everyone's like, I'm so sorry for your loss. And that's a really hard thing to hear, because you're like, thank you. Like, what do you say to that? Like, thanks,
Yeah.
thanks. And so inside, I felt so many feelings of like, of anger, of confusion, of obvious sadness, but I felt numb at the same time. I numbed myself so I didn't have to feel. And I just, there's so many people there that you never see before, and it's like, why are you here?
Yeah.
Like you did not ever talk to my sister, or you don't talk to me. Like, it was just so, yeah, it was weird, but here I was just consoling everybody, and it felt good. It felt good to help other people, because a lot of them, that was their first death. So it was really, really hard though for me I felt pressure to keep it together for my parents.
Yeah.
And I felt like everyone was watching me and how I reacted. So if I acted calm, I could help other people feel calm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But the morning of her funeral, I I spent the time just I needed to be distracted, so I was focusing on my appearance and my makeup and whatever. And the second I got to the funeral, say goodbye, because the funeral, when they bury the casket, it's like it's real. It's like, okay, no, they're really gone. Like
Yeah.
it it was really difficult. And so then after the funeral, I had to tell my kids what had happened. And so I'm like, how can I do this in a way how can I make the best of this situation? So I printed off pictures of my sister, and my middle son was 5, my daughter was 2, and my older son was 10. And my daughter obviously had no idea what was going on, but I was like, I couldn't say this without crying. I said, Aunt Kiki's gone. And they looked at me and I was crying. And my middle child was like, are you joking? Because I didn't really cry in front of them. And when he realized that it was real, they lost it. And my goodness, is it so hard to give your children information like that and just watch and be and feel their sadness?
Yeah.
It was just very difficult for me. And so going on and parenting through that was even more difficult. I got to a point where all I could do was take care of them. And I was sitting on the couch every minute I could. I wasn't taking care of myself. My husband had a talk with me, kind of basically saying that he didn't like how I was. Like he didn't know what to say to me,
Yeah.
you know. So that didn't help. That made me more upset. And so I was just like, I'm not good enough. Like, my husband doesn't want to be with me. I can hardly do what I can for the kids. And so I became suicidal again. And I was having all these visions of like, what would it be like if I wasn't here? And so that scared me because I was like, whoa, I don't want that. Like, it was like the darkness was pulling me in. And I was like, no, I'm not going there. So I reached out to a therapist and I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I might need to go to like a mental institution or like a psych ward or something. And she's like, take a breath. Mental institutions don't exist anymore. And she's like, and so like that kind of like made me like laugh a little because I have a dark sense of humor. And she looked me in the eye and she's like, I can help you. And I immediately trusted her. Like, I felt like she was the first person to really see me with my mask off. And so she diagnosed me with complex PTSD and generalized anxiety disorder and depression. Like, I had already been diagnosed in the past with major ADHD, and I was medicated off and on for that, but I hadn't been medicated for years. And so I knew I needed help, and she helped me understand my trauma and how it was affecting me. She encouraged me to start putting myself first. And, for me, that was really hard because I felt selfish.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't buy myself new clothes. I'd rather get my kids another outfit when they already have 35 outfit.
Yeah.
And so I just did it in baby steps. I started doing art again. Like, I loved art when I was young, so I started doing art. And there was a time when I got to a point, because I don't have closure from my sister's death. She was murdered, and the person that did it is still walking this earth because all the evidence we have is circumstantial. So that makes the grieving process even more difficult. And so with therapy, she's like, I don't know how to help you with the part of closure. Like, I don't have experience with that. So she referred me out to a spiritual coach. And as I was talking earlier, she gave me a reading on my sister. And she's like, everything that you think that happened is what happened. And then she continued in detail to talk about things like she knew my sister was pregnant when she passed away. Like, there's no way she could know that. And it was just so beautiful to get closure from her. And so she was like, your sister can't wait to talk to you. Like, you have psychic abilities just like me, and you can connect, and you're an empath. And she's like, I can help you develop your skills and use your gifts for good, because I kind of looked at them like a curse,
Yeah.
just everything.
I did,
And
girl, again, like, speaking my story. We have a different, like, kind of side story going on, but again,
mhm.
I mean, you couldn't be, I literally, these words could have came out of my mouth, but keep going. Go ahead.
Yeah, so she coached me on my spiritual gifts and psychic abilities, all the clairs, like see, feel, hear, you know,
Hmm.
telepathy, all that stuff. So I'm like, oh, this is me. This is why I don't feel like I belong here. This all makes sense. Like, I started opening my eyes to what everybody shuts down, what everybody doesn't
Hmm.
want to see because they're scared. And once I started doing that, my life completely shifted. I really felt at peace with my sister being gone, because she wasn't really gone. She's here all the time. I always see signs of her. And so I'm like, I have to share this with other people. I can't keep this to myself. Like, it felt selfish. So
Yeah.
I decided I wanted to be a coach. But first, I wanted to start my other business, which was using my creative outlet, my art, and selling it. I started with canvases with paint pours and little, knickknacks of like coasters and stuff. And then it turned into furniture. And then where it is now is kitchen and bathroom refinishing, like cabinets. And so that's my creative outlet. And my fulfilling outlet is and was to be a coach.
Hmm.
So I was kind of thinking about it. I didn't really do it yet. And during this time with starting my business, my husband and I were not doing well. There's just kind of, he had gone through some traumas. He lost his grandpa, and COVID hit, and I started my business during COVID. COVID hit, and there was just a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, and a lot of people have had difficulties with marriage after being shut in their house with their loved ones afterwards. So yeah, my husband and I were having a really hard time, and we even thought we might separate. And then we got in a car accident. My children and my husband were all in the vehicle, and I thought I was going to die. I thought my kids were going to die, or worse, that my children would die and I would be left here.
Yeah.
And to me, I don't know if I could go on without my children. So here I am. I don't have time to process it, but I'm in the biggest fear of my life. I can hear my kids screaming.
Oh my God.
We're on the expressway and my husband slams on the brake. And mind you, I was trying to take a nap, so I opened my eyes to this. I didn't have
Oh.
any time to process. And so this car, it was the first snow of the year, this car swerved over and we hit the car and then we hit a tree. But before we hit a tree, something told me to open the door. And I smelled smoke, and I knew that I was like, we have to get out of the car now. And so I swung open. I didn't even have shoes on. It was cold. So I stepped right into snow and coldness, and I didn't care. I opened the door. I got my daughter out. She was 5. I was holding her, and she was screaming. My 13-year-old got out of the car himself. I assumed my husband would get my other child out of the car. He was 8. He was more concerned about the passengers, which obviously that is important, but I kept telling him, we gotta go, there's gonna be a fire. And he was like, no, it's fine. It's just, I don't know, whatever mechanical term. It's just this. And I was like, no, we gotta go. And he was moving slow, which this is nothing new. This is something that usually triggers me about him.
Yeah.
So he grabbed our son, and we I was like, we got to go far away. We got to get far away from these cars. And everybody listened to me. And the passenger's car was completely engulfed in flames second later, just
Damn.
completely. And so luckily everybody was okay. Both the cars were totaled. And I almost had a panic attack, but I stopped it in its tracks. And I had to help my 8-year-old son because he was having a panic attack. I had to help
Oh,
him
baby.
with his. And so in this moment, though, when I stopped my panic attack after I experienced the most terrifying thing in my life, I was like, I'm ready to be a coach. If I can stop myself, I can help others.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was, really traumatic. I ended up later with like pinched nerve, muscle damage, my spine just all out of place, like not broken, but like I had to see a chiropractor and I continue to see one over a year later. It's been a really, really hard journey. I thought I was healing, but my car accident and kind of is like, it taught me to stop fearing things. And it forced me to sit down and really heal within. And so I decided to do my coaching program because I couldn't do my other business. I didn't have the strength. So
Mm-hmm.
I did coaching program with Elementum Coaching Institute. And when I did this program, you coach yourself too. You do the work before and you heal clients. You coach each other and then you heal clients. So this is like a really, really hard process because you're going through trauma and healing trauma as you're coaching others.
Mm-hmm.
And last year was the hardest year of my life because I had to heal a lot of trauma, relive a lot of trauma, and release it. Because in order to heal, you have to feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds scarier than it truly is. But once you release it, it's so beautiful on the other side. And so I got certified in December as a master certified coach, which means I have over 300 hours plus of experience working with others, releasing trauma, doing somatic work, and all kinds of other tools and resources that I can help people use to help themselves. So it just feels like my children, my sister, like everything I've been through pushes me to use this gift that I have to help others heal so that they don't have to hurt like I did. And it gives me this like purpose. Like I know why I'm here now on this earth. And I don't want to leave because I have so much work to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why now I help traumatized empaths become empowered by teaching them how to release and process their emotions so they can feel safe and they can create the life they desire.
That is beautiful, girl. Oh my God. Like first of all, you've been through more in your life than I feel like most people go through in 3 lifetimes. And you're how old?
33.
Okay, yeah. Like your strength is incredible. And you know what? I feel you on so many, like we're so alike on so many things with your story. I wanted to stop you and tell you, but I was like, this is her story, Jackie. Shut up. We could talk about it then. So like, and I am truly like when I went to the retreat, I don't know if you listened to my podcast, but I ended up going to this retreat after my mental breakdown. And I got
Yes.
the same thing told to me that I met with, a spiritual coach, and she was like, your hands. And I was like, yeah, I'm a hairstylist. I'm creative with my hair. She goes, no, 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 no. She goes, you're like me. You can talk to
Mhm.
spirit and help people. She's like,
Mhm.
your hands, like, for some reason, like, I'm, getting it through your hands, but I can see and I can feel you. Like you have people around you. Like this is
Mhm.
happening. And it changed my life. And also with like the whole grieving in your sister, I tell that to everybody. I'm like, listen, I can't tell you how many people I've seen do this. I can't tell you, I've felt I don't know if you felt anything yet for people that have passed, but I've felt it. Okay. And
Mhm.
they are there. And with the most love and support. Like, it is overwhelming. I've
Absolutely.
I haven't had a bad experience yet, knock on wood, where like I know some people are like, "Oh, you see the dark side." Like, I'm a love and light person. I'm
Mhm.
all of that stuff, you know. I only welcome what can help. And let me tell you, like, when I talk about things that have hurt me in the past, meaning like my aunt died right at the beginning of COVID and it shattered me. I can't even really be sad because I feel like truly if you had a connection to somebody in your life and literally in your chest and your heart you feel it, they are a part of you and they are there with you and they are watching and they know what's going on. And no matter what, like if you talk to them like a crazy person out loud, like say this, say that, they hear you, you know, like
Mhm.
there have been literal psychics that come out and tell people like you were doing this and they heard you and the people are like, how the hell would you know that? So like spiritually, I believe in the exact same thing. Like your sister's with you all the time, all the time.
Mhm.
And I'd even had like, and I don't know about you, but the person that I was talking to about it, she was like, you've had all these moments in your life where you were like, you've had these experiences and you couldn't, like, you knew you were different, but you didn't know what to do with it. And I'm telling you now where you can go with it. Like, and she's like, you've had like these gut feelings or these like strong intuition moments. She's like, that is all part of it. She's like, this is what you are made to do. So what I chose to do was my podcast, right? Because in the whole, I went to a mother's retreat. I think I told you this story. I told it a
Mhm.
thousand times. The mother's retreat, me pulling the card after I didn't know what to do and how to make my depression and anxiety work for me, and it told me share my journey to help others. Well, I believe that other people sharing their journeys is just as important, right? And it's just so beautiful that you could take all of these pains in your life and use it for the good. And you are just such a strong person. Thank you so much for being on. Do you want to share anything?
So, as an empath, I hear you, I see you, and I feel you in your deepest pain. So, let me guide and support you on your journey to healing as a coach. And everything we need to know is within us. We just have to listen and look for the signs because our loved ones give it to us. Spirit, whatever you believe in, it's already in yourself. You just have to trust and surrender to the universe and be patient. And then that's how you manifest and live the life that you want to live.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Jessica. The strength in that woman, my God, so beautiful, so powerful. We're actually going to do a bonus episode with her where she will come back and speak a little more on what she does. So be looking out for that. As always, thank you so much for listening. You can rate and leave comments to me. I would love that. I have a page on Facebook. I have Instagram. I have TikTok. It's all the Mama Jack. The Mama Jack, the Mama Jack, the Mama Jack with a C. If you would like to be a guest, please reach out on any of those platforms. If you have anything to share with me, just to reach out on any of those platforms. I love, love, love hearing from everybody. Have a great day and thank you so much for listening.